You can pet the dog. 10 out of 10. I think, as is the case with a lot of modern indie games, the main appeal of this game is the art. Whether it's the soundtrack, the actual art design, or the graphics, those are really the only thing that make it stand out from other games that are similar. And the reality is that these games are like a dime a dozen. There's dozens and dozens of these platformers where basically the only thing making them stand apart from each other is the art. Some of them may have some unique gameplay, but more often than not, it really is just the art. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'll play every single one of them. I don't care. But the truth is the truth. So that having been said, the art in this game is gorgeous. It's obviously not pushing boundaries of graphical technology by any means, but what they've done, and I assume this is the Unreal Engine. Honestly, I don't remember at this point. I'd have to go back and look, because I don't think it has an Unreal Engine logo on it, so it may not be, but regardless of what the engine is, it looks gorgeous. The entire game looks like a painting. It's kind of like flat shaded. There aren't really a lot of details on anything, just because you don't have to see them up close. With it being a side-scrolling, like a 2.5D platformer. Same concept that makes Naughty Dog games look so good, or really most games made by Sony, is that you spend most of the time zoomed out, so you don't actually have to look at the textures for anything. And in the grand picture, they all look great. And that's the same case here. The graphics all look great, or rather, the art looks great. I guess in this game, they're really one and the same. Since it doesn't have anything too flashy, any spectacular graphics effects. A lot of the game is spent, probably like 4 or 5 chapters are spent in the dark. So you have these scenes where what little light source there is illuminates the dark very well, and it just looks really cool. But even when you go outside, that art, I don't know what to call the art style, but that painting-like art style just looks really cool. And there are a lot of moments where you get to see it. Whether it's like chapter 1 overlooking the island from a hilltop on a bench. And the cool thing about that is you actually get to see the levels that you're going to play in the future. You just don't know it. But from that vantage point on chapter 1 at the end, you can actually see almost all of the future chapters, like from a distance, except for the mine, which is obviously underground, or the last couple chapters that are nowhere nearby. And not just in dark spaces, but there are a lot of sections where the aliens are searching for you, so you have this bright pink or purple light that contrasts very well against the background or the darkness. Another thing being that because the core mechanics are based around light, those really are like the most stark contrasts to the rest of the environment on the screen, because you have multiple different colors of lights that illuminate the environments frequently, whether it's while you're doing puzzle solving or whatever. But even without the lights, everything just looks really cool. I don't want to call it a unique art style. I'm sure there are things that look similar, but regardless, it just looks really cool. I like it, if you couldn't tell. You don't spend a terribly high amount of time in populated areas, or areas that would have been populated. But the amount of time that you do, they did a good job of conveying the emptiness of a world where people have either been killed or abducted by aliens or whatever has happened to them. That sense of isolated happiness is there in the world just through some of the camera angles and some of the environments you go through. You can tell everything's been destroyed and people are no longer on the planet, to put it in weird words. The gameplay in Somerville isn't exemplary. There's nothing that's going to surprise you. There's nothing special whatsoever about the gameplay. It's as close to quote-unquote walking simulator as it can get while still being a platformer. The only real gameplay is moving forward. You get 3 alien powers: blue, red, and purple. Blue melts the alien liquid metal stuff. Red hardens it. Red is also used to destroy things in some scenarios. The purple isn't really used until the end of the game. It's more of like a passive power. You don't get to actually use it outside of button prompts. That's it. That's all there is to it. There is some moving of objects. You can press a button to interact with an object, and you can press a button to pick up a light source, or move an object or whatever. That's it. That's all it boils down to. You use those tools from beginning to end. There's some minimal puzzle solving involving blue and red lights, but again, they don't get any more complicated than having to turn something on, hold the power on the object, and then use the right color of light in order to do whatever needs to be done to progress to the next scene. There aren't any boss fights. There aren't any actual puzzles where you have to, match symbols on the ground to a lock or anything like that. There are a few chase sequences, but when I say a few, literally I mean like 3. But all you have to do is run away, and the game will rescue you each time. That's all there is to it. There isn't a whole lot to say for a fact about the story because there's no exposition. I don't know what the actual script for the game says, and I'm sure no one else does except for the people that made it. However, it is told entirely through environmental storytelling. So, as you play the game, you'll notice details in the background and with what's happening in the foreground, which tell the story in a pretty efficient and quick way. And I think it's pretty cool. Compared to some other indie games where there are actually narrators, I do like games where the story is kind of left up to your interpretation rather than just blatant exposition all the time. And I think more games should be like that. This game came out in 2022, and so since then the price hasn't really dropped all that much. Currently it's $25 US on Steam. There is a bundle where you can buy it with Planet of Lana, and it's $36. I have never played Planet of Lana, so I don't know if that makes it worth it. But I reject that concept in the first place. I think it's a decent experience. The problem is, if you're not willing to pay $25 for like 3 hours of entertainment, then it's not worth it to you. This game will not take you more than 3 hours to beat. If once you play it the first time, it's going to take you maybe an hour and a half to beat. So people like to compare it to movie tickets. It's still probably cheaper than a movie for 3 hours that you can replay over and over, but there really isn't any purpose in replaying this game after the first 1 or 2 times it takes you to get all the achievements. The only achievement that is possible not to get on your first playthrough is the one to encounter, it's called like close encounters, because it's possible that you can miss a couple of the alien robot dudes. Ultimately, I think it's worth it. I don't think it's that big of a deal. With Game Pass, the price is probably similar to Steam. I don't know what the price is on PlayStation. I don't think it's on PlayStation. But I think it's worth it just to support the developers.